One of the many reasons why Britain attracts migration, and we've got to remember that when it comes to Europe and neighbouring countries like Turkey, we are 19th in the list of people who are attracting large numbers of migrants. And in fact, the number of people who are arriving on our coast is significantly less than it has been in the past. It's not the crisis that Suella Braverman and her cronies are making out that it is. It's not the crisis that the Daily Mail is claiming. It's modest. It's modest, but it is attracting attention. Anyway, one reason why we are attracting a number of people, let's say we are attracting people who may not be entirely legitimate refugees, or even people who are and have a choice. Are they going to seek refuge in a country whose language they don't speak? Are they going to go and try and live in France or Germany or the Czech Republic or Lithuania when they don't speak the language? No, one of the problems is our English language market has been so unbelievably successful. The British Council has been pumping out exams and facilities for teaching English as a foreign language. I mean, I've been doing some of that myself. I spent 10 years in Greece writing EFL books, and I was the voice of quite a lot of EFL literature. I was the listen and repeat voice in so many of these publications. So I feel I've sort of been there. I've also taught English as a foreign language, quite a lot. I still do a certain amount of that. We are sitting on a nest egg in terms of business. It pulls in so much money worldwide. I think at an estimate we're looking at something like 61.62 billion pounds. That's what the industry is worth. It's extraordinary. And 1.75 billion people speak English for business. So which country is somebody going to try to live in? If they possibly can, they're going to live in a country where they can speak the language. Maybe even more, they have relatives in Britain. If they can get over to the States, maybe they have relatives in the States. But Britain is a first port of call because it has a language people have been taught. And we have to take that into consideration, particularly when we're looking at what we have started to call economic migrants. I'm not even sure if that term is sound. It's like the term invasion. It's a term of abuse. And yet so many of us have got economic migration in our backgrounds. So many of us. And so many of us, within one generation, we can think of parents who were not born in this country, born in Ireland, born in India, born elsewhere in Europe, or as in the case of Boris, literally, he was born in America. We are a global society, and probably now we need to recognize that immigration is a global problem. It should not be something simply borne by the poorer countries in southern Europe, by Greece, by Italy, by France. It needs to be something that we are sharing. Turkey has taken in the most enormous number of migrants. And it turned to Germany and said, well, give us money so that we can build houses for these people. That money never came, you know. It was promised, it never came. It's extraordinary. The whole business of The whole business of migration has been filled with finger wagging and rhetoric and very little action, because it's not something that any politician really wants to deal with. They want to pass it on to somebody else, pass the buck. And as for the Home Office, we're looking at a problem in the Home Office which was riddled with error over 20 years ago. Over 20 years ago. And what we've done is add piece of paper on piece of paper on piece of paper, like a sticking plaster, but without any glue. This, incidentally, was the wonderful idea of Mrs. May, and she called it the hostile environment. The hostile environment is just lots and lots of bureaucracy, which is impenetrable. And in that, maybe she was looking at the countries in southern Europe. I remember a hostile environment. I remember trying to negotiate my way through Greek bureaucracy. It was impossible. And it was only after I had burst into tears in a police station because I couldn't do what they were asking me to do that somebody took me to one side and said, well, the problem isn't the problem isn't in the paperwork. The problem is in your approach. Because no one's expected to complete all this paperwork. You're expected to have a fakilaki. And I thought the person was swearing at me. What is a fakilaki? A fakilaki is a white envelope stuffed with money. And you have to make sure you've got the right amount of money in the right place. In that particular case, crying in a police station was just as good as a fakilaki. I got what I wanted. I was able to register as self-employed. Didn't do me much good. Within a very short space of time, I had no work. But for that short period when somebody who had employed me and had then decided I had to be self-employed because I was doing too many jobs for them, and was therefore withholding all my pay, for that short period of time, I was finally accepted as a self-employed person in Greece. Nightmare, absolute nightmare. And of course the person who was originally employing me was basically doing something criminal and was pushing me around because they could. And we in Britain are doing the same thing to foreigners who come here looking for help. We are behaving like some sort of Southern European backsheesh-ridden hellhole because we can. Now today I'm really proud to say that Greece has pulled its act together and is a beacon of propriety. It does things properly. Do we? No, we've left Europe. We don't do things properly. We have our mountain of bureaucracy and we make it impenetrable. We make it impossible. And that's called the hostile environment. And that was set up by Theresa May. And that is going strong. And on top of that, we're now throwing slogans and nasty rhetoric. We are demonizing whole communities. I don't recognize this as Britain.